You live in a place where time moves differently, where the earth itself serves as your calendar, and the seasons write themselves across the landscape in languages older than words. Your village sits nestled in a valley that cradles it like cupped hands, protecting it from the harshest winds that sweep down from the mountains. The houses here are built low and strong, their stone walls darkened by countless winters, their roofs heavy with the memory of snow. Your own dwelling is a testament to this patience. The stones that form its walls were gathered from the surrounding fields by hands that came before yours, each one chosen not for its beauty, but for its ability to hold firm against the pressing cold. The mortar between them is mixed with local clay, creating joints that expand and contract with the seasons, breathing with the building itself. When you run your fingers along these walls, you feel the texture of survival, rough, honest, enduring. The windows are small and deep set, framed with timber that has weathered to a silver grey. Through them, you watch the world change its clothes with each passing season, but it is the approach of winter that draws your attention most completely. You have learned to read the signs, written in the behavior of birds, in the way the light slants differently each afternoon, in the subtle shift of color that spreads across the distant hills like a slow tide. Inside, your floors are made of wide planks worn smooth by generations of footsteps. They creak in familiar places, offering a wooden song that accompanies your daily movements. The ceiling beams are heavy and dark, marked here and there with the scars of time's small cracks that have never grown larger. Nail holes from decorations long since taken down, the gentle bow that comes from supporting the weight of many winters. Your fireplace dominates one wall, its mouth large enough to accommodate the substantial logs that will soon become necessary for survival. The hearthstone is worn to a gentle curve by the countless times feet have found their place there, seeking warmth. Above the mantel, hooks hold the tools of your life, iron implements for tending the fire, wooden spoons that have stirred countless pots, herbs hanging in bundles that release their fragrance when the warmth rises to meet them. The furniture in your home speaks of function married to endurance. The table where you eat was made from a single oak that fell in a storm decades ago, its grain flowing in patterns that tell the story of seasons lived and survived. The chairs around it are sturdy enough to hold not just bodies, but the weight of long conversations, of planning and hoping and remembering together. In the corner nearest the fire, a wooden chest holds the things that matter most, blankets woven on looms by women whose names you know, quilts that tell stories in their patterns, winter clothes that carry the scent of the cedar chest where they waited through the warm months. When you lift the lid, the smell that rises speaks of preparation, of foresight, of the understanding that comfort must be carefully preserved and deliberately shared. Your bedroom is a sanctuary of simplicity. The bed frame is solid, built to last through decades of use. The mattress is stuffed with materials gathered from your own land, hay from the meadows, feathers from geese raised in your yard, wool from sheep that graze the hillsides. When you lie down each night, you rest on the very essence of your place, supported by the labor of your hands and the generosity of the earth. The walls of this room hold only what serves: hooks for clothes, a small shelf for the few books that have found their way to this remote place, a mirror that reflects not vanity, but the practical need to see yourself clearly in the lamplight. The single window faces east, ensuring that the first light of dawn will find you, calling you back to consciousness and to the work that each new day requires. This is where you dwell, not merely where you live. Every object, every surface, every carefully considered detail serves the larger purpose of creating a shelter that can withstand not only the physical challenges of winter, but the emotional weight of isolation, the psychological pressure of scarcity, the spiritual test of finding meaning in repetition and routine. You have learned that home is not a place of retreat from the world, but a fortress from which you engage with it more deeply. Your dwelling connects you to the cycle of seasons, to the community of neighbors who share your challenges, to the long history of people who have lived this way and found it not just sustainable, but profoundly meaningful. As you move through these familiar rooms, You carry with you the knowledge that each corner, each beam, each carefully tended detail represents a choice to remain, to endure, to find beauty in the fundamental act of making a life from the materials at hand. Your home is both anchor and sail, grounding you in place while preparing you for the journey that each new season demands. You have become fluent in a language that most people never learn to speak, the vocabulary of approaching weather written in the behavior of the world around you. This morning, you step outside and immediately sense the conversation taking place between earth and sky, a dialogue conducted in pressures and temperatures, in the quality of light and the direction of wind. The air carries messages that your lungs translate without conscious thought. Today it tastes of metal and distance, the particular flavor that arrives 2 days before snow. Your breath emerges in small clouds that dissipate quickly, not yet the steady visible exhalation that comes with true cold, but a preview of what is approaching. You have learned to read these signs the way others read newspapers, gathering information that will determine the shape of your days to come. The wind speaks in different voices as it moves through the landscape. When it comes from the north, it carries the scent of pine and the promise of clear skies. From the west, it brings moisture and the complex aroma of distant storms brewing beyond the mountains. Today it shifts between directions, unable to settle, carrying mixed messages that speak of unsettled weather systems organizing themselves beyond your sight. You watch the way light behaves differently as winter approaches. The sun sits lower each day, casting longer shadows that change the familiar geometry of your world. Colors appear more saturated in this slanted illumination. The red of barn doors seems to glow, the gold of remaining leaves burns more brightly, the gray of stone walls develops subtle purple undertones that emerge only in this particular quality of autumn light. The trees around your village have begun their annual conversation about preparation. The leaves that remain whisper more loudly now, their drying surfaces catching and releasing the wind with a papery sound that grows more pronounced each day. Some trees have already shed their burden, standing in circles of their own making, their roots drawing nutrients from the blanket of decay that will feed next spring's growth. You notice how the animals have begun their own preparations, following instincts calibrated by millions of years of survival. The birds that will leave have already begun to gather, their flocks growing larger and more restless each day. Those that will remain have changed their behavior, spending longer hours foraging, their movements more focused and urgent. Even the domestic animals sense the shift. Your chickens roost earlier, your cow seeks shelter more readily, your cat spends longer hours in the sunny spots that still exist. The earth itself is changing its pasture. The ground that was soft and yielding through the summer months has begun to firm up, holding frost longer each morning before releasing it to the strengthening sun. When you walk across the fields, your footsteps sound different, more substantial, as if the earth is preparing to support the weight of snow that will soon cover it. At night, the stars appear more brilliant, their light cutting through the clear air with an intensity that seems almost aggressive. The moon, when it appears, illuminates the landscape with a brightness that transforms the familiar into something mysterious and new. You have learned to read the night sky as carefully as the day, understanding that clear nights mean colder mornings, that the ring around the moon prophesies wind, that the behavior of clouds even in darkness tells you what the dawn will bring. Your body has become an instrument for measuring these changes. Your joints speak of barometric pressure with an accuracy that rivals any weather station. Your skin tightens when humidity drops, relaxes when it rises. Your sleep patterns shift with the changing length of days. Your hunger increases as your body begins to prepare for the greater caloric demands of staying warm. Inside your house, you have learned to listen to the smaller signs that confirm what the larger world is telling you. The way the wood in your walls expands and contracts speaks of moisture in the air. The behavior of your fire changes, with atmospheric pressure drawing more strongly on some days, burning more reluctantly on others. Even the cats that wander through your life seem to understand things you can only guess at, appearing at your door hours before storms that you haven't yet sensed. This knowledge is not academic, but essential. The information you gather from these daily observations determines how you spend your time, what work takes priority, which preparations must be completed first. You are constantly making calculations based on the data your senses provide. How many more days of good weather for hanging laundry outside? When to harvest the last vegetables? How soon to start banking the fire that will burn through the coldest nights? The older residents of your village possess this knowledge in its most refined form. They can predict not just weather, but the character of an entire winter based on subtle signs that appear in early autumn. They share this wisdom generously, but you understand that true fluency in this language can only come from years of careful attention, from the accumulation of experience that transforms observation into intuition. Your relationship with wood is intimate and essential, measured not in board feet or cords, but in the weight of security it represents. Each piece you split and stack carries with it the promise of warmth through the months when cold becomes not just discomfort, but a genuine threat. The work of preparing this fuel is both meditation and imperative, a rhythm that has structured the autumn of your life for as long as you can remember. The trees you harvest were chosen months ago, marked during late winter, when you could walk easily through the woods and assess which ones had completed their service to the forest. Dead oaks with heartwood still solid, maples that fell in spring storms and seasoned through the summer, pine that will burn hot and fast for kindling. Each species brings its own character to your fire oak that burns slow and steady through the long nights, birch that lights easily and burns clean, applewood that fills your house with a subtle sweetness. Your axe is an extension of your body, its handle worn smooth by your hands, its weight perfectly balanced for your strength and height. The rhythm of splitting becomes hypnotic. Lift, aim, follow through, split. The sound of steel biting into wood rings across the yard, a percussion that announces your preparation to the whole village. Your muscles remember this work from year to year, returning to the motion with the pleasure of familiarity. You have learned to read wood the way others read books. The grain tells you where the axe will bite cleanly and where it will fight you. Knots announce themselves in the pattern of growth rings, warning you to adjust your aim. The color of the wood speaks of moisture content, pale and light when properly seasoned, dark and heavy when still green. Your nose can distinguish between types even with your eyes closed, each species carrying its own particular scent when split fresh. The stacking is its own art form, requiring patience and strategy. You build walls of wood that must stand stable through wind and snow while allowing air to circulate for continued drying. Each piece must find its place in the larger architecture, supporting and supported, creating a structure that is both functional and satisfying to contemplate. The face of your wood pile presents itself to the winter like a shield, rows upon rows of split ends offering their promise of heat to come. Your hands bear the marks of this work, calluses that map the pressure points where handle meets palm, small scars from chips of flying wood, the deep staining that comes from handling bark and sap. These marks are not signs of hardship, but badges of competence, evidence of your ability to provide for yourself and those who depend on you. When you look at your hands, you see capability made visible. The woodshed becomes a shrine to foresight. Each carefully stacked row represents hours of work, completed in good weather against the promise of bad. The oldest wood sits closest to the house, ready for immediate use, while the newest occupies the back rows, continuing to cure in the protection of the roof. You know exactly how much you have, how much you need, how long it will last if winter proves gentle or if it demands more than usual. Your relationship with this fuel extends beyond its practical value. The fire you build from your own labor warms you twice, once in the cutting and splitting, once in the burning. There is a satisfaction in feeding your stove with wood you selected, cut, split, and season yourself, a completeness that connects you directly to the source of your comfort. You understand that every BTU that heats your home passed first through your hands, carried the weight of your preparation. The sound of wood burning becomes the soundtrack of your winter evenings. The crackle and pop of drying sap, the soft roar of flames finding purchase in dry kindling, the settling whisper as logs collapse into coals. Each sound tells you something about the quality of your fuel, the behavior of your fire, the efficiency of your stove. You learn to listen to your fire the way a mechanic listens to an engine, hearing health or problems in its voice. Even the ash that remains serves your purposes. Nothing is waste in this cycle of preparation and consumption. The ash becomes fertilizer for a next year's garden, potash for soap making, and abrasive for cleaning. The circle completes itself as the trees that warmed your winter return to nourish the soil that will grow their replacements. Your neighbors share this understanding, and wood becomes a currency of community. You trade oak for apple, labor for season splits, knowledge for kindling. The man with a sawmill shares lumber with those who help with the cutting. The woman whose trees fell in a storm repays assistance with splitwood. These exchanges bind the community together with obligations that strengthen rather than burden. On the coldest nights, when wind drives the chill through every crack and your fire burns brightest, you feel the satisfaction of preparation fulfilled. Each log that feeds the flames represents a choice made months earlier, work completed when it was easier, foresight that transforms potential suffering into actual comfort. Your warmth becomes a testament to your understanding of time's requirements and your willingness to meet them. In your pantry, summer refuses to surrender to winter without a fight. Every jar, every crock, every carefully wrapped bundle represents a small victory against the seasonal tyranny that would leave you hungry when the earth grows too cold to produce. You have become an alchemist of preservation, transforming the abundance of warm months into the security of cold ones through processes that connect you to every generation that has faced this same challenge. The vegetables that now line your shelves underwent their metamorphosis in the heat of late summer, when your kitchen became a laboratory of salt and sugar, vinegar and thyme. Cucumbers disappeared into brine to emerge weeks later as pickles, their crisp bite preserved in solutions that your grandmother mixed by intuition rather than measurement. Cabbage surrendered its bulk to become sauerkraut, fermentation transforming its raw greenness into something more complex, more durable, more suited to sustaining life through the lean months. Your hands remember the work of preparation, the endless chopping that reduced pounds of vegetables into uniform pieces suitable for their jars, the scalding water that sterilized containers and sealed lids, the careful timing that determined whether preservation succeeded or failed. The kitchen filled with steam and the sharp scent of vinegar, with the sweet smell of fruit becoming jam, with the earthy aroma of vegetables accepting their transformation. Each jar tells a story of timing and attention. The green beans that hang suspended in their clear brine were picked at the exact moment of perfect tenderness, processed within hours of leaving the vine. The tomatoes that glow red in their glass containers ripened in your garden until their skins stretched tight with juice, then surrendered to heat and pressure that locked their summer essence into forms that winter cannot touch. The fruit preserves represent pure distilled sunshine, concentrated in jellies and jams that will spread summer across winter bread. Strawberries that burst with June sweetness, apples that carry the crisp promise of autumn, grapes that darken to purple under late summer sun, all transform through the ancient alchemy of sugar and heat into forms that time cannot diminish. Each spoonful will release remembered warmth into the cold months ahead. Your root cellar extends the season without transformation, providing a cool, dark sanctuary where vegetables rest in dormancy rather than preservation. Potatoes nestle in bins of sand, their eyes closed in patient waiting. Carrots lie buried in containers of slightly damp earth, their orange brightness muted but undiminished. Onions hang in braided chains that sway slightly in the cellar's subtle air currents, their papery skins protecting the sharp sweetness within. The hard squash that crowd the cellar shelves represent patience in its purest form. Their thick skins serve as natural preservation systems, protecting the sweet flesh within through months of storage. You arrange them carefully, ensuring air circulation, checking periodically for soft spots that might spread, rotating them to prevent pressure bruises. Each one holds enough substance to feed your family for several meals, their dense nutrition concentrated and waiting. Herbs hang in bundles throughout your house, their dried leaves holding the memory of summer's growth. Basil that once crowned your tomato plants now releases its concentrated essence into winter soups. Oregano that spread across sunny garden beds brings Mediterranean warmth to cold evening meals. Thyme that weathered spring rains and summer droughts offers its subtle strength to broths that will sustain you through the harsh months. The smokehouse that stands behind your property serves as another partner in this process of preservation. The hams that hang in its aromatic darkness absorbed months of careful curing, salt drawing moisture from meat, while smoke added flavor and protection. The bacon that waits in slabs represents the transformation of time and attention into sustenance, its fat a concentrated source of calories that cold weather demands. Your grain storage reflects the most fundamental form of preservation. Wheat berries rest in sealed containers, their hard kernels holding the potential for bread through the entire winter. Corn kernels wait their turn to become meal, their yellow promise of warm cornbread glowing in the lamplight. Oats and barley rest in their own containers, each grain a small package of energy, preserved by nature's own design. Even your dairy follows the rhythms of preservation. The cow that still gives milk through the shorter days provides cream that becomes butter, churned and salted and stored in cool crocks. Cheese ages in the cellar, developing complexity and character while maintaining its nutritional value. Eggs collected from chickens that stubbornly continue laying despite the shortened days rest in water glass, their shells sealed against the passage of time. This abundance that surrounds you is not wealth in any material sense, but something more valuable: security. Each jar represents independence from the whims of weather and the failures of distant supply chains. Every preserved vegetable is a small rebellion against scarcity, a declaration that preparation and foresight can transform seasonal limitation into year-round abundance. When you open a jar of peaches in the depths of February, the sweet juice that runs down your chin carries with it the memory of heat and growth and plenty. These preserved treasures do more than feed your body, they feed your spirit, reminding you that even in the darkest months, summer lives on in the careful work of your hands and the wisdom of your planning. Your days follow a rhythm set, not by clocks or calendars, but by the demands of survival and the opportunities of weather. Each morning presents itself with a list of tasks that cannot be postponed, work that connects you directly to the fundamental requirements of staying warm, fed, and secure through the approaching winter. This labor is not burden, but purpose, giving shape and meaning to time that might otherwise pass without accomplishment. Before dawn breaks fully, you are already moving through the responsibilities that anchor your day. The animals that share your homestead depend on your consistency, and their needs provide the framework around which everything else must arrange itself. Your cow waits for milking with the patience of routine, her warm bulk generating steam, the cold morning air. The rhythm of milk hitting the bucket becomes a meditation, the white streams creating their own percussion as they fill the container with nutrition that will sustain your family through another day. The chickens that scratch and peck in their protected yard expect their feed and their freedom, their gate open to release them into the larger world of foraging and exploration. You scatter their grain in patterns that encourage movement, watching as they follow the ancient dance of search and discovery that has characterized their species for millennia. Their eggs, gathered warm from nest boxes, represent daily renewal, proof that life continues its generous production even as winter threatens to curtail it. Your garden, though much reduced from its summer glory, still demands attention. The hardy vegetables that remain, kale and Brussels sprouts, leeks and parsnips, actually improve with cold weather, their starches converting to sugars as protection against freezing. You harvest what is ready, cover what needs protection, and clear away the spent plants that have completed their contribution to your table. Even this cleanup serves a purpose, adding organic matter to the compost that will enrich next year's soil. The wood that heats your home has daily attention, a constant cycle of feeding the stove and banking the coals, of bringing in fuel from the shed and monitoring the draft that controls the burn. Each log must be chosen for its purpose: hardwood for the overnight burn that will carry heat through the coldest hours, softer wood for quick heat when the fire needs revival, kindling for the spark that begins each day's first fire. Your movements around the stove become automatic, guided by understanding rather than conscious thought. Water, which flows freely from taps in warmer places, requires your active participation here. The well that serves your house runs deep and clear, but bringing its contents to your kitchen demands the muscle of your arms and the strength of your back. Each bucket carried is heavy with more than just weight. It carries the satisfaction of self-sufficiency, the knowledge that your household's needs are met by your own effort, rather than the distant machinery of municipal systems. The clothes that protect your family from the cold require constant maintenance, a cycle of washing and mending that ensures warmth remains uncompromised by wear or tear. Your fingers know the texture of wool that needs to be felted, cotton that requires patching, leather that benefits from conditioning. The sewing that fills your evening hours is not decoration, but necessity, each stitch a small barrier against the elements that would find their way through gaps in fabric or worn spots in seams. Your kitchen becomes the center of production, as well as consumption, the heart of your home's economy. Bread rises according to schedules, set by the timing of meals and the availability of heat. Soups simmer on the back of your stove, their ingredients drawn from your own preservation efforts, their warmth filling the house with aromas that speak of comfort and security. The beans that soak overnight will cook slowly through the next day, their protein and fiber stretching other ingredients into meals that satisfy both hunger and budget. The work of maintenance never truly ends. Roofs require checking for loose shingles that might admit winter's attack. Windows need caulking where cold air finds its way through gaps. Tools require sharpening and oiling to maintain their effectiveness through the demanding season ahead. Each task completed is a small insurance policy against the failures that could transform minor inconvenience into major crisis. Your hands bear the evidence of this work, roughened by tools and weather, marked by small wounds that heal and fade only to be replaced by new ones. These are not signs of hardship, but of engagement, proof that your life is connected directly to its own support systems. When you look at your palms, you see competence mapped in callus and scar, capability written in the language of useful work. The satisfaction that comes from this labor is immediate and lasting. Unlike work performed for distant supervisors toward abstract goals, each task you complete serves visible, necessary purposes. The water you carry becomes the tea that warms your evening. The wood you split becomes the fire that lights your night. The food you preserve becomes the meal that satisfies your hunger. Cause and effect remain close enough to touch, connected by the effort of your own hands. Even rest becomes more meaningful when it follows genuine exertion. The chair by your fire feels more comfortable when you have earned its embrace through the completion of necessary work. Sleep comes more easily when your body has been used for its intended purposes. Leisure reveals its true value when it exists in balance with labor rather than as an escape from it. In your world, scarcity is not poverty, but opportunity, a chance to discover the hidden potential in things that others might overlook or discard. You have developed an artist's eye for seeing usefulness where others see only exhaustion, beauty where others see only wear, possibility where others see only limitation. This art of making do is not born from necessity alone, but from a deep understanding that resourcefulness is its own form of wealth. The fabric that patches your family's clothes tells stories of other garments that serve their time and moved on to new purposes. A worn work shirt becomes reinforcement for the knees of sturdy trousers. The soft cotton of a child's outgrown dress finds new life as patches for winter quilts. Nothing is too small to save, too damaged to repurpose, too humble to deserve consideration. Your sewing basket holds scraps, sorted by color and weight, a treasure trove of possibilities waiting for the right application. Your furniture bears the marks of multiple generations of repair and adaptation. The kitchen table that serves your family has been mended so many times that it tells the history of your household in its patched and reinforced joints. A leg broken in childhood games was splintered with wood from another piece and now stands stronger than before. The finish worn away by decades of use has been restored with linseed oil rubbed deep into the grain, giving the surface a patina that no new piece could match. In your tool shed, implements wait that have been saved from abandonment and restored to usefulness through patience and skill. Handles broken from age or abuse receive new life with wood shaped by your own hands, fitted and finished to serve another generation of work. Blades dulled by use return to sharpness under the patient stroke of whetstones that themselves have been worn thin by decades of service. Even rust surrenders to determined attention, revealing metal that still holds strength beneath its temporary coating of oxidation. The art of making do extends to the most fundamental aspects of daily life. Soap runs low. You learn to make it from wood ash and save fat, creating cleanser that serves its purpose while teaching you the chemistry of saponification. Candles burn down to stubs that would elsewhere be discarded, but here find new purpose melted together with fresh wicks to burn again. String that once tied packages becomes binding for repairs, leaders for fishing lines, supports for climbing plants in your garden. Your cooking has evolved to accommodate whatever ingredients present themselves, transforming limitations into creativity. The vegetables that grow despite poor soil or adverse weather find their way into soups and stews that celebrate their unique characteristics, rather than hiding their imperfections. Bones that others might discard become the foundation for broths that extract every trace of nutrition and flavor. Even scraps from meal preparation serve their purpose: potato peels for the animals, vegetable trimmings for the compost that will enrich next year's garden. The containers that hold your preserved food have lived multiple lives before finding their current purpose. Jars that once held store-bought goods now protect your home-canned vegetables. Crocks that originally served other households now cure your sauerkraut and store your pickles. Even paper serves beyond its original intention. Newspaper becomes fire starter. Wrapping paper protects vegetables in storage. Book pages damaged for reading become templates for sewing patterns. Your approach to maintenance follows the same philosophy of extracting maximum value from minimum resources. A roof that leaks receives patches cut from material salvaged from other repairs. Windows that fog with age are restored with techniques learned from necessity other than manuals. Paint mixed from pigments and linseed oil covers surfaces with colors that may not match perfectly, but serve their purpose of protection and beauty. This resourcefulness creates its own aesthetic, a beauty born from function and honesty. The quilt that covers your bed tells the story of your family's clothing over generations, each square a memory preserved in cloth. The tools that hang in your shed show the marks of repair and modification, their surfaces polished by use to a sheen that speaks of value and care. Even the patches on your work clothes become their own decoration, creating patterns that speak of durability and thrift. Your neighbors share this understanding, and the art of making do becomes a community practice. Knowledge passes between households about techniques for restoration and repair. Tools are shared rather than owned individually, maximizing their utility while minimizing their cost. Materials saved by one family find their way to another, where they serve new purposes, creating a circular economy that wastes nothing and values everything. The satisfaction that comes from successful adaptation runs deeper than mere accomplishment. When you transform something discarded into something useful, you participate in a form of creation that connects you to fundamental human skills. Your hands become instruments of transformation, your mind a laboratory for discovering hidden potential. Each success builds confidence, not just in your abilities, but in your understanding of how things work, how they can be modified, how they can be improved. This art teaches patience as much as skill. Some repairs cannot be rushed. Some solutions require waiting for the right materials or conditions. You learn to hold problems in mind until inspiration strikes, to save materials until their proper application reveals itself. Time becomes an ally rather than pressure, allowing solutions to develop organically rather than being forced into being. Winter brings with it a quality of silence that exists nowhere else in the yearly cycle, a deep quiet that transforms the very character of your world. This is not merely the absence of sound, but something more profound, a presence in itself, a thickness in the air that changes how you move, how you speak, how you experience the passage of time. You have learned to listen to this silence, to find in it not emptiness, but a different kind of fullness. The snow that blankets your village creates its own acoustics, muffling the sharp edges of everyday sounds while amplifying others in unexpected ways. Your footsteps, which ring clearly on frozen ground, become whispers when they break through the snow's surface. The voices of your neighbors, which carry clearly across summer air, now seem to travel underwater, reaching you softened and transformed. Even the wind speaks differently. Its voice changed from sharp whistle to low moan. It moves through the laden branches of evergreen trees. Inside your home, the silence takes on different qualities. The constant small sounds of daily life, the settling of wood in the stove, the tick of cooling metal, the soft whisper of air moving through partially closed dampers become a symphony of domesticity. You learn to hear your house breathing, to sense its moods in the way floorboards creak under temperature changes, in the almost inaudible expansion and contraction of timbers responding to the warmth within and the cold without. Your animals move differently in this muffled world. The cow that usually announces her presence with the clear ring of her bell, or appears almost silently, her footsteps cushioned by snow, her bell's voice deadened by the cold, that makes metal sound different. Even the chickens seem to understand the new rules, their usual chatter reduced to occasional soft murmurs as they huddle together for warmth in their protected roost. The silence of deep winter nights reaches depths that can be almost overwhelming. When the wind stops and the snow falls straight down in thick flakes, the world becomes so quiet that you can hear your own heartbeat, your own breathing amplified in the stillness. These are the nights when sound travels impossible distances, when the crack of a tree surrendering to cold reaches you from miles away, when the call of an owl carries across the entire valley with crystalline clarity. This quality of quiet changes how you relate to noise when it does occur. The sudden sharp report of splitting wood becomes startling in its intensity. The slam of a door, unremarkable in other seasons, now seems violent and intrusive. Even your own voice, when you speak after long periods of silence, sounds foreign and overly loud. You learn to modulate your sounds to match the world's new acoustic environment, speaking more softly, moving more deliberately, honoring the peace that winter has imposed. The silence creates space for different kinds of attention. Without the competing sounds of growing things and active life, you find yourself listening more carefully to the subtler communications of your world. The quality of wind that speaks of approaching weather changes, the different sounds that snow makes when it falls on various surfaces, the almost inaudible whisper on soft ground, the tiny percussion on frozen leaves, the barely perceptible brush against window panes. Your work adapts to this new acoustic environment. Tasks that seemed natural in other seasons now feel intrusive when they break the winter quiet. Chopping wood becomes an event that announces itself across the entire neighborhood. Starting any kind of engine seems like a violation of natural law. Even the simple act of walking across the yard feels like an intrusion into a sacred space that demands reverence and respect. The silence teaches you patience in new ways. Conversation becomes more deliberate, more meaningful when it breaks the quiet. Words carry more weight when they must compete with the profound peace of winter stillness. Family gatherings become more intimate, voices naturally dropping to match the hushed quality of the season. The stories told around your fire gain power from the contrast between spoken word and the deep quiet that surrounds them. This stillness affects your sleep in ways both profound and healing. The absence of the constant small sounds of active life allows rest that goes deeper than mere physical recovery. Your dreams become more vivid, your sleep more complete. Even the quality of waking changes. Instead of being pulled into consciousness by external demands, you surface naturally from rest, emerging into the peaceful quiet like rising through calm water. The silence of winter also creates space for inner listening. Without the distraction of constant external inputs, you find yourself more aware of your own thoughts, your own rhythms, your own responses to the world around you. This enforced quietude becomes a form of meditation, teaching you to find activity in stillness, purpose in pause, meaning in the simple act of being present to the moment, without the need to fill it with noise or motion. Yet this silence is not empty. It is filled with the presence of waiting, the earth resting beneath its blanket of snow, the trees gathering strength for spring's renewal, the animals conserving energy for survival and future reproduction. You learn to feel this gathered potential in the stillness, to sense the enormous power of dormancy, the creative force of a parent in activity that will explode into growth and movement when the season turns. In your village, winter transforms the very meaning of ownership, dissolving the boundaries between yours and mine into a more fundamental understanding of ours and theirs. The cold that threatens each household individually becomes the force that binds the community together, creating circles of mutual dependence that extend far beyond mere neighborliness into something approaching kinship forged by common need and shared vulnerability. Your nearest neighbor is the widow whose husband died to winters past, leaving her with a house too large for one person and tasks too heavy for aging hands. Without spoken arrangement, you find yourself splitting wood that finds its way to her shed, checking on her stove when bitter winds test the integrity of every heating system, sharing soup that somehow always makes too much for your own family. These exchanges happen naturally, flowing from understanding rather than obligation, need rather than charity. The man who lives down the valley possesses skills that your hands have never mastered, the ability to coax life from dying engines, to mend harness leather so it serves another season, to sharpen tools until they cut like new. His workshop becomes a community resource, his expertise shared freely in exchange for the vegetables that your garden produces in abundance, the milk that your cow gives beyond your family's consumption, the helping hands that appear when his own work grows too large for solitary effort. Your children learn this economy of sharing as naturally as they learn to walk. They carry messages between houses, deliver small gifts that acknowledge need without acknowledging pride, return borrowed tools with the automatic courtesy that comes from understanding that community resources must flow freely to serve community needs. They understand that the extra egg, the shared loaf of bread, the helping hand offered without being asked, create the web of mutual support that makes survival possible and comfortable. The knowledge that circulates through your community represents another form of shared wealth. The old woman who remembers which herbs heal, which ailments, shares her understanding with anyone who asks and many who don't. The man whose father taught him to predict weather from signs invisible to younger eyes offers his forecasts freely, understanding that accurate information serves everyone's interest. Even failures become community property, mistakes shared prevent others from repeating them, lessons learned by one become wisdom available to all. Your communal work takes on ritualistic significance during the most demanding seasons. When someone's roof requires repair that cannot wait for spring, the entire neighborhood appears with tools and materials, transforming what could be individual crisis into community project. When the first major storm threatens, families move through practiced routines of mutual preparation, checking on elderly neighbors, securing loose materials that might become dangerous projectiles, sharing space for animals that need better shelter. The food that sustains your community flows in patterns that have evolved over generations of scarcity and abundance. Families with successful gardens share their surplus, understanding that next year's growing conditions might favor different households. The hunter who brings down a deer distributes meat according to ancient protocols that ensure everyone benefits from the bounty, while honoring the work and skill that made it possible. Even preserving becomes communal activity, large batches of sauerkraut or pickles requiring more hands than any single family possesses. Your celebrations and observances gain meaning from this context of mutual dependence. The warmth of gathering in each other's homes becomes more than social pleasure. It represents efficient use of fuel, shared preparation of special foods, distribution of isolated families into company that combats the psychological pressures of long, dark months. Music and stories shared around communal fires create memories that sustain spirits when individual resources grow thin. The borrowing and lending that characterizes your community extends beyond material objects to encompass time, labor, and attention. The family dealing with illness finds their daily chores mysteriously completed by neighbors who ask for nothing in return except the understanding that similar help will be available when their own crises arise. Tools move from household to household, following patterns of need rather than ownership, their value measured not in possession, but in utility distributed across the entire community. Your children's education happens through this network of shared responsibility. Each adult becomes teacher for skills they have mastered, each household a classroom for different aspects of survival and culture. The blacksmith's forge becomes school for metalworking, the baker's kitchen for bread making, the seamstress's parlor for needlework and pattern making. Knowledge passes not through formal instruction, but through inclusion in the work itself, children learning by doing alongside experts who understand that skills must be transmitted to ensure community survival. Even your privacy exists within understood boundaries that accommodate community needs. Doors remain unlocked not from carelessness, but from recognition that emergency might require immediate access. Windows stay uncontained during evening hours, allowing light to serve as signal that all is well within. Absence of lamplight alerting neighbors to investigate potential problems. Your individual space exists within collective awareness that monitors without intruding, watches without spying. The economic calculations that govern your exchanges resist precise accounting. Value flows in directions that pure monetary systems cannot capture. Gratitude transformed into future assistance. Kindness repaid with unexpected generosity. Small gifts that acknowledge large favors without attempting to balance scales that were never intended to achieve perfect equilibrium. Your wealth becomes measured not in accumulation, but in the richness of relationships that ensure security beyond what any individual household could achieve alone. This sharing creates its own forms of governance, informal but effective systems that ensure fairness without requiring enforcement. Social pressure, applied gently but consistently, guides behavior toward community benefit. Recognition and respect flow toward those who contribute most generously, while isolation gradually corrects those who take more than they give. The community regulates itself through mechanisms more subtle but more powerful than written rules or formal authority. Your kitchen becomes a laboratory of transformation during the cold months, a place where the humblest ingredients yield their secrets under the patient application of heat, time, and understanding. The meals that emerge from your stove carry more than nutrition, they carry comfort, memory, the alchemy that transforms basic sustenance into something approaching grace. Each pot that simmers, each loaf that rises, each jar that opens represents a small victory against the austerity that winter might otherwise impose. The soup that bubbles on the back burner began its existence as bones that others might discard, vegetables that had seen better days, scraps and trimmings that seemed destined for the compost pile. But under the patient ministration of low heat and long time, these humble beginnings transform themselves into something rich and nourishing. The bones surrender their hidden marrow. The vegetables release their concentrated flavors. The herbs add complexity that speaks of summer meadows and careful preservation. Your bread requires no recipe beyond the knowledge that lives in your hands. The starter that bubbles in its crock carries cultures older than your grandmother's grandmother, wild yeasts captured from the air itself and maintained through generations of feeding and care. When you add flour and water to this living community, you participate in a process that connects you to every person who has ever coaxed sustenance from grain, patience from dough, warmth from the marriage of fire and time. The root vegetables that seemed so plain when pulled from storage reveal their hidden sweetness when subjected to the slow heat of your oven. Potatoes emerge with skins crackling and interiors fluffy as clouds. Carrots concentrate their essence into forms that taste more like carrot than carrots themselves. Onions surrender their sharp bite to become sweet and yielding, transforming tears into satisfaction through the simple application of sustained heat. Your preservation jars open like time capsules, releasing summer's abundance into winter's constraint. The tomatoes that glowed red in August now bloom into sauce that brings color to gray February meals. The peaches that sweeten July afternoons become compote that brightens March mornings. Each jar holds not just food, but memory, not just nutrition, but the promise that seasons turn, that abundance returns, that present limitation serves temporary, harder than permanent sentence. The milk that your cow provides daily becomes dozens of different foods under your kitchen's influence. Cream rises to become butter that spreads golden across bread, still warm from baking. Cultures transform liquid into cheese that improves with age, developing complexity that speaks of patience rewarded. Even the whey that remains after cheese making finds purpose, feeding animals or adding protein to bread dough, ensuring that nothing of value disappears unused. Your eggs multiply their usefulness through techniques learned from necessity and refined through practice. Fresh eggs become custards that stretch milk into dessert. Preserved eggs provide protein when chickens reduce their laying. The shells themselves serve gardens as calcium supplements, contributing to next year's production while minimizing waste. Each egg represents perfect packaging, complete nutrition wrapped in nature's own biodegradable container. The herbs that hang in bundles throughout your house wait for their moment of transformation. Dried leaves that seemed fragile as dust bloom into complex flavors when introduced to heat and moisture. Sage that looked grey and lifeless resurrects itself in stuffing that makes ordinary bread extraordinary. Thyme that appeared spent gains new life in stews that warm more than just the body. Each herb carries concentrated essence that multiplies the impact of simple ingredients. Your cooking adapts to the rhythms imposed by your heating system. The long, slow simmers that characterize winter cooking serve double duty, extracting maximum nutrition and flavor while contributing heat to warm your living space. Bread baked during the coldest hours adds warmth to the kitchen while providing sustenance for days to come. Even the steam that rises from cooking pots adds humidity to air dried by constant heating, creating comfort that extends beyond mere calories. The fat that renders from cooking meat becomes liquid gold in your household economy. Bacon grease saves to flavor vegetables that might otherwise seem austere. Beef tallow preserves in containers that will provide cooking medium for months to come. Even chicken fat finds purpose, rendered and stored for use in dishes that require richness beyond what lean ingredients might provide alone. Your meals gain ceremony from their context of careful preparation and mindful consumption. The table set with plates warmed by the fire, the food served hot from stove to bowl, the gathering of family around sustenance that represents hours of work and forethought. These simple rituals transform eating from mere necessity into acts of communion that nourish spirit as well as body. The flavors that emerge from your kitchen speak of place and season in ways that no restaurant could replicate. Your food tastes of the soil where vegetables grew, the grain that animals consumed, the water that flows from your own well. Each meal carries the signature of your particular microclimate, your specific methods, your individual understanding of how time and temperature transform ingredients into satisfaction. Even your simplest preparations carry depth earned through attention and care. The cornbread that emerges from your oven speaks of corn grown in your field, ground at the local mill, mixed with eggs from your chickens and milk from your cow. The beans that simmer through long afternoons carry flavors built layer by layer, the smokiness of unbone, the sweetness of onions cooked until golden, the earthiness of herbs dried in your own attic. You have learned to read the sky like text, to parse the grammar of clouds and wind into predictions that guide your daily decisions and long-term preparations. This literacy extends beyond simple observation into genuine comprehension, understanding not just what weather approaches, but what it means for your work, your comfort, your survival through the months when nature tests every aspect of your preparation and resolve. The morning sky speaks first in the quality of light that filters through your windows. Grey light that lacks shadows warns of snow within hours. Yellow light that seems thick and substantial promises wind. Pink light that makes everything glow suggests the approach of weather systems that will arrive with drama and demand attention. You read these signs before you read the barometer, understanding that your eyes often see what instruments cannot yet measure. The wind carries information that arrives hours before the weather systems that generate it. Today's breeze from the southwest brings the scent of distant rain, the promise of warmer air that will collide with the cold mass currently settled over your valley. You feel this collision coming in the pressure changes that make your joints ache, in the way the animals seek shelter before the storm announces itself with obvious signs. Your understanding of clouds has evolved beyond simple recognition into sophisticated analysis. The high, thin wisps that streak across morning skies speak of wind patterns 30,000 feet above your head, movements that will influence tomorrow's weather, even though they seem disconnected from your earthbound concerns. The puffy cumulus that builds through afternoon hours carries within it the potential for evening storms, their vertical development driven by forces that your experience can predict even when their exact timing remains uncertain. The behavior of snow reveals itself in dozens of different forms, each carrying its own message about temperature, humidity, wind speed, and duration. The large, wet flakes that fall straight down speak of warm air aloft and brief duration. The fine, dry crystals that swirl horizontally warn of long storms and bitter cold. The mixture of snow and rain that creates treacherous conditions announces unstable air masses that will bring variable conditions, requiring constant adaptation. Your animals serve as sensitive instruments for detecting weather changes that human senses might miss. The cow that usually stands in the open pasture seeks shelter hours before storms arrive. Chickens that normally scatter across their yard cluster near their roost when wind or precipitation approaches. Even the cats that hunt through your buildings show weather awareness, their behavior changing in response to pressure variations that herald significant atmospheric events. The trees around your property tell weather stories through their movements and sounds. Evergreens that sway gently in normal breezes begin their characteristic moan when wind speeds increase to dangerous levels. Deciduous trees that stand bare through winter make different sounds when ice forms on their branches, the musical tinkling that warns of precipitation frozen in air cold enough to make travel hazardous. Your house itself becomes a weather station, its responses to atmospheric conditions providing information that supplements what you observe outdoors. Drafts that normally remain unnoticed become obvious when pressure drops before storms. Doors that usually fit snugly begin to stick when humidity rises. Even the behavior of your fires changes with barometric pressure, drawing more strongly when low-pressure systems approach, burning more reluctantly when high pressure settles over the region. The timing of weather patterns follows rhythms that your observation has revealed over years of attention. Morning fog that burns off quickly promises clear afternoons. Clouds that build during daytime heat usually produce evening storms. Wind that shifts direction at sunset often brings different weather within 12 hours. These patterns guide your planning, helping you schedule outdoor work during favorable periods and prepare for indoor activities when conditions turn difficult. Your neighbors share weather wisdom accumulated over generations of observation, creating a collective understanding that surpasses what any individual could develop alone. The old man, who can predict snowfall amounts from the behavior of birds, shares his knowledge freely. The woman whose grandmother taught her to read wind patterns passes this information to anyone who asks. This communal meteorology provides backup systems when individual observation fails or when unusual conditions require interpretation beyond personal experience. The microclimates that exist within your valley create variations that require local knowledge to understand and predict. The hollow where cold air settles may experience frost when surrounding areas remain warm. The ridge that catches prevailing winds may receive precipitation when the valley below remains dry. These variations matter for decisions about when to harvest remaining crops, how to protect vulnerable plants, where to move animals that need shelter from specific weather threats. Your seasonal understanding extends beyond short-term weather prediction into recognition of larger patterns that influence entire months or seasons. The early appearance of certain cloud formations may herald long periods of unsettled weather. The behavior of migrating birds sometimes indicates winter severity weeks before temperatures drop. Even the thickness of animal coats or the production of nuts by trees can provide clues about what the coming months will demand. This weather literacy transforms from passive observation into active engagement with atmospheric forces. You don't simply endure weather, but participate in it, adapting your activities to work with rather than against natural systems. Your daily rhythms follow weather patterns, your work schedule accommodates atmospheric schedules, your entire lifestyle harmonizes with cycles larger than human convenience, but comprehensible through patient attention and respectful observation. The satisfaction that comes from accurate weather prediction extends beyond mere intellectual achievement into genuine survival advantage. When you correctly anticipate storm arrival, you complete outdoor work before conditions deteriorate. When you accurately gauge temperature trends, you adjust heating and clothing appropriately. This knowledge represents the difference between comfort and suffering, between preparation and crisis, between working with nature and fighting against it. Winter imposes its own rhythm of social contact, creating periods of necessary solitude that test your relationship with yourself as thoroughly as community life tests your relationships with others. The storms that make travel impossible, the cold that keeps people huddled near their fires, the shortened days that compress visiting hours into narrow windows, all of these forces combine to create periods when you must find sufficiency within the walls of your own home, companionship within your own thoughts, entertainment within your own resources. The silence that fills your house during these isolated periods carries different weights at different times. Sometimes it feels oppressive, heavy with the absence of voices and the sound of other footsteps. On these days, you find yourself speaking aloud to animals, to yourself, to the fire that crackles in response to your words. The sound of your own voice in the quiet rooms seems strange and intrusive, yet necessary to break the spell of soundlessness that threatens to become overwhelming. Your relationship with time changes during these periods of enforced solitude. Without the markers provided by other people's schedules, without the interruptions that normally structure your days, hours can stretch like rubber or compress like springs. You learn to create your own rhythm, to impose structure that serves psychological as well as practical needs. The routine of daily chores becomes more important not just for their practical results, but for the framework they provide for consciousness that might otherwise drift without anchor. The work that fills these solitary hours takes on contemplative qualities. Mending clothes becomes meditation, each stitch requiring attention that quiets mental chatter while producing visible progress. Reading by lamplight becomes journey into other worlds, other lives, other ways of understanding the human condition. Writing letters that may not be delivered until spring becomes communication with the future. Messages cast forward into time that will eventually carry connection across the isolation that winter imposes. Your mind learns to find entertainment in sources that might seem inadequate during busier seasons. The patterns that frost makes on windows become artworks worth studying. The way firelight plays across familiar objects creates shadows and highlights that reveal new details in things you see every day. Even the simple act of watching snow fall can become absorbing, each flake following its own unique path through air currents that remain invisible except for their effect on frozen precipitation. The books that line your shelves gain new importance during these periods of isolation. Stories that you might skim during busy seasons receive careful attention when time stretches long and unstructured. Information that seemed merely interesting during summer months becomes crucial knowledge when you have the leisure to absorb it thoroughly. Even familiar volumes reveal new layers when read by someone whose mind has been simplified by solitude and silence. Your dreams become more vivid during these periods of reduced external stimulation. Sleep that in other seasons serves merely as rest becomes theatre, where your mind processes the experiences and concerns that fill your waking hours. The boundary between sleeping and waking thoughts becomes more permeable, daydreams flowing into night dreams and night dreams influencing day thoughts in ways that create continuous narrative threading through consciousness. The house itself becomes your companion during these solitary periods. You learn to read its moods in the way floorboards creak, to sense its needs in the way drafts move through rooms, to find comfort in its familiar sounds and smells. The building that shelters you reveals personality traits that emerge only when observed with the patient attention that solitude makes possible. You develop affection for its quirks, tolerance for its limitations, gratitude for its protection that extends beyond mere appreciation into genuine fondness. Your relationship with your own thoughts deepens during these periods of reduced external input. Ideas that normally receive only fleeting attention gain time to develop fully. Memories that usually remain buried under the pressure of immediate concerns surface for examination and integration. Plans that exist only as vague intentions during busy periods receive the detailed consideration necessary to transform them from possibility into reality. The food you prepare for yourself alone takes on different characteristics from meals shared with others. Cooking becomes less performance and more pure function, yet paradoxically often results in more creative solutions when freed from the need to accommodate other preferences. You experiment with combinations that might seem strange to others, discover flavors that please only your own palate, develop techniques that serve your individual needs rather than common expectations. Your physical relationship with your environment intensifies during periods of solitude. Without the distraction of social interaction, you become more aware of temperature variations within your house, more sensitive to the quality of light at different times of day, more conscious of the subtle sounds that indicate various household systems functioning properly or requiring attention. Your body becomes a more sensitive instrument for reading environmental conditions when your attention is not divided among multiple people and their needs. The correspondence that you maintain with distant friends and family gains special importance during these isolated periods. Letters written in solitude carry different emotional weight from those composed in the midst of social activity. The words you choose come from deeper consideration. The thoughts you share emerge from more careful reflection. Reading letters from others becomes more significant when their voices represent the only human contact available for days or weeks at a time. Even your relationship with the animals that share your property changes during periods of human isolation. The cow becomes more than livestock, she becomes presence, her breathing and movement providing evidence of life beyond your own. The chickens gain personality that you might not notice when surrounded by human companions. The cats that hunt through your buildings become sources of entertainment and companionship that serve psychological needs as well as practical pest control functions. Your house holds layers of history, ecological strata, each generation of inhabitants leaving traces that speak of lives lived within these walls, of struggles faced and overcome, of small triumphs that accumulated into the larger victory of continuance. As winter deepens, and you spend more time within these familiar rooms, you find yourself excavating these layers, discovering stories that connect your current challenges to those faced by everyone who has called this place home. The floorboards beneath your feet carry the wear patterns of countless footsteps, paths worn smooth by the repetition of daily routines that have remained essentially unchanged for generations. The route from bed to kitchen, to fire to door, has been traced so many times that the wood itself has molded to accommodate human movement. When you walk these paths, your feet follow channels carved by your predecessors, connecting you physically to the rhythms that sustained life in this place long before your birth. The walls around you hold secrets revealed only to careful observation. Behind the current paper, or paint, older layers wait like pages in a book, colors that spoke of different eras, different tastes, different economic circumstances. Sometimes these earlier decorations show through in corners where moisture has loosened the latest covering, providing glimpses into the aesthetic choices of families whose names you may never know, but whose presence you feel in every room. Your kitchen bears the marks of countless meals prepared under similar circumstances. The worn spots on your work surface align with similar marks made by women who face the same challenges of feeding families through long winters with limited resources. The scratches that mark your cutting board echo marks made by knives that solved similar problems decades ago. Even the soot patterns around your stove mirror those left by earlier cooking fires, testimony to the unchanging requirements of warmth and nourishment. The furniture that serves your family carries its own archaeological record. The kitchen table bears ring marks from hot pots placed by hands that are now dust, knife scars from cutting bread to feed children now grown and gone. The chairs around it have been worn smooth by bodies that found rest and comfort in the same positions where you now sit. Each piece tells the story of utility that transcends individual ownership, objects that have served human needs so consistently that they have earned their place through pure functionality. Your cellar holds remnants of earlier preservation efforts, empty jars, whose labels speak of vegetables grown in different years, root beans that have held countless harvests, shells that have supported the weight of security stored against uncertain times. The techniques you use to preserve food follow methods developed by previous inhabitants, refined through trial and error into systems that work reliably regardless of who implements them. The outbuildings on your property, the evidence of adaptation and modification that speaks to changing needs and evolving solutions. The barn that now houses your animals bears marks of different configurations, different uses, different animals that require different accommodations. The shed that holds your tools contains hardware from various eras, nails and hinges and latches that represent different technologies applied to the same basic needs for security and organization. Your garden occupies soil that has been cultivated for generations, its fertility built by the accumulated efforts of families who understood that the land's productivity required constant attention and care. The compost that enriches your vegetables contains remnants of meals eaten by people you never met, completing cycles that extend far beyond your individual tenure. Even the placement of your beds follows patterns established by earlier gardeners who learned through experience where different crops grew best. The trees that surround your property tell stories of earlier residents in their growth patterns and management. The fruit trees that provide your harvest were planted by hands guided by hope for future abundance, tended by families who might not live to see full production, but who understood their responsibility to plant for those who would come after. The shade trees that protect your house were positioned by people who thought in decades rather than seasons, who understood that comfort sometimes requires investment in benefits that will accrue to others. Your water system follows routes established by the first settlers who faced the same need to bring clean water from source to house. The well that serves your needs taps into the same aquifer that sustained earlier families, its stone lining laid by hands that understood the importance of clean water and the techniques required to maintain it. Even the path worn from house to well speaks of countless trips to carry water for cooking, cleaning, and drinking. The heating system that warms your house builds on solutions developed through generations of trial and error. The placement of your stove follows principles learned by families who understood how heat moves through buildings, how to maximize efficiency, how to distribute warmth where it is needed most. The patterns of ash and soot around your fireplace echo similar patterns left by fires that provided similar comfort to similar families facing similar challenges. Your library, however small, contains books that have been read by multiple generations of inhabitants. The margins of these volumes hold pencil marks made by people whose thoughts paralleled your own as they encountered the same ideas, faced the same questions, sought the same understanding. The wear patterns on pages speak of passages that provided comfort or insight to readers, now gone, but somehow still present in the marks they left behind. Even your daily routines echo those of previous inhabitants who faced identical challenges of staying warm, fed, and secure through winter months. The order in which you complete your chores follows logic developed by experience that transcends individual preference. The timing of your meals, the sequence of your work, the rhythm of your days all follow patterns that have proven effective for sustaining life under these specific conditions. This awareness of continuity provides comfort that extends beyond mere historical interest. You are not the first person to face these challenges, not the first to wonder if spring will ever return, not the first to question whether preparation will prove adequate. Your struggles connect you to a long chain of people who face similar trials and survived them, who found solutions that you now implement, who developed wisdom that you now inherit, and will eventually pass on to those who follow. Even in the depths of winter's grip, when snow lies heavy and cold seems permanent, you carry within your understanding the knowledge that this darkness is not ending but beginning the beginning of return, the first movement in the slow dance that will eventually restore warmth and growth and abundance to your world. This knowledge sustains you through the most difficult days, providing light that no lamp can offer, warmth that no fire can duplicate, hope that no comfort can replace. Your relationship with light becomes more intimate during these short days, when precious hours of illumination must be treasured and maximized. The thin winter sun that struggles through bare branches carries different qualities from the abundant light of summer, weaker in intensity, but perhaps more precious for its scarcity. You find yourself following patches of sunlight as they move across your floors, positioning yourself to absorb whatever warmth and brightness the day offers, understanding that each minute of natural light represents victory over the darkness that surrounds it. The seeds that rest in your storage containers carry within their dormant forms all the abundance of next year's garden. These small, dry packages seem insignificant compared to the harvest they produced, yet they hold more potential than any treasure. Each seed contains the genetic memory of countless generations of growth and reproduction, the accumulated wisdom of plants that have survived similar winters and emerged to create new life. When you hold these seeds in your palm, you hold the promise of tomatoes and squash, beans and corn, all the vegetables that will once again fill your table with their abundance. Your animals understand the cycles in ways that human consciousness sometimes forgets. The cow that gives less milk in winter's short days carries within her body the capacity for increased production when grass grows green and days grow long. The chickens that lay fewer eggs huddle together, not in defeat, but in conservation, maintaining their strength for the increased laying that will come with longer days and warmer temperatures. Even the cats that hunt through your buildings move with the confidence of creatures who know that mice and rats will become more numerous as stored grains attract them and breeding cycles accelerate with spring's return. The earth beneath its covering of snow and ice remains alive, waiting rather than dead. The soil that appears frozen and barren actually teems with microorganisms, preparing for spring's explosion of activity. Root systems of perennial plants rest in dormancy that resembles death, but conceals profound preparation for renewed growth. Even the compost pile that seems inactive under its blanket of snow continues its slow work of decomposition, creating the rich humus that will feed next year's garden. Your woodpile, though diminished by winter's consumption, represents careful calculation that anticipated this season's demands. Each stick burned brings you closer to spring, while the remaining fuel promises warmth through the remaining cold. The mathematics of survival that guided your autumn preparation included margins for unusual cold, unexpected storms, extended winter that might test your reserves without overwhelming them. Your foresight becomes vindicated with each day that passes without shortage. The preserved food that lines your shelves tells the same story of abundance deferred rather than abundance lost. Each jar opened brings you closer to the empty shelves that will mark winter's end and spring's beginning. But these jars represent more than mere consumption. They represent the successful transformation of seasonal abundance into year-round security. The tomatoes that glow red in their glass containers will sustain you until fresh tomatoes once again ripen in your garden. Your planning for next year begins even in winter's depth, fed by the lessons that current experience teaches. The varieties that preserved best will receive more space in next year's garden. The techniques that proved most effective will be repeated and refined. The challenges that tested your preparation will be met with improved strategies. Winter becomes not just survival, but education. Each difficulty overcome adding to the knowledge that will make next year's preparation more effective. The community that supports you through winter's isolation will emerge stronger from shared challenges and mutual assistance. The neighbors who helped when your roof needed repair will find their own needs met by others who learned from your example. The food shared when abundance allowed will be remembered when abundance returns. The networks of mutual aid that sustain you through difficult times will prove their value and strengthen their bonds. Your house, tested by winter's extremes, reveals its strengths and weaknesses in ways that guide future improvements. The corners where cold penetrates will receive attention during spring's work season. The systems that proved inadequate will be upgraded or replaced. The features that performed well will be maintained and protected. Winter becomes diagnostic, revealing what needs attention while demonstrating what already works effectively. The skills that winter demands become permanent additions to your capabilities. The ability to read weather signs accurately will serve you in all seasons. The techniques for preserving food will apply to next year's harvest. The understanding of how to maintain warmth efficiently will reduce future fuel requirements. Every challenge overcome becomes competence that will make future challenges easier to meet. Your body, adapted to winter's demands, carries forward strength and resilience that will serve you well when warm weather returns heavy work to your days. The muscles developed by splitting wood will serve you when garden work resumes. The endurance built by daily chores in difficult conditions will make spring work seem easy by comparison. The patience learned during long winter evenings will help you wait for seeds to germinate and crops to mature. Even your spirit, tested by isolation and challenged by scarcity, emerges more appreciative of abundance and companionship when they return. The simple pleasures that winter taught you to value will not be forgotten when easier times return. The satisfaction found in essential work will continue to guide your choices when options multiply. The understanding of what matters most will inform decisions long after necessity no longer dictates them. This knowledge of return, this faith in cycles, this understanding of dormancy as preparation other than ending these insights sustain you through the darkest days and coldest nights. You know that spring will return not because you believe in miracles, but because you understand patterns, not because you hope for rescue, but because you comprehend the reliable functioning of natural systems that have operated successfully for millions of years before your birth and will continue long after your death. You feel it first in moments so subtle that consciousness barely registers the change of different quality in the light that falls through your windows, a shift in the angle of shadows cast by familiar objects, a barely perceptible lengthening of the day that speaks to senses more ancient than thought. The winter solstice has passed, perhaps weeks ago, and though the coldest weather may still lie ahead, the fundamental direction of change has reversed itself. Earth has begun its slow turn back toward the sun, carrying you and your village and all the life that winter has held in suspension back toward warmth and growth, and the abundance that seems impossible from this perspective, but which you know with certainty will return. Your animals sense this change before your conscious mind acknowledges it. The cow that has given minimal milk through the darkest days seems more alert, more interested in the hay you bring her, more responsive to your voice when you speak to her during morning chores. The chickens emerge from their huddle-centered existence to spend more time moving around their protected yard, their combs showing the first hints of the bright red that signals increased laying. Even the cats that hunt through your buildings move with slightly more energy, their winter lethargy beginning to give way to the restlessness that will characterize their spring behavior. The light that enters your house each day carries promise that grows stronger even when its actual duration increases by minutes too small to measure with any instrument except the accumulated observation of weeks and months. You notice it in the way afternoon illumination now reaches corners that have remained in shadow since autumn, in the different quality of morning light that seems less grey and more golden, in the subtle shift of colours that makes familiar objects appear slightly different, slightly renewed. Your seed catalogues, when they arrive with the mail that manages to find its way through winter storms, become literature of hope and planning. The photographs of vegetables and flowers speak of abundance that will once again fill your garden, variety that will replace winter's monotony, colors that will return to a landscape currently rendered in shades of white and brown and grey. You study these pages not as fantasy, but as practical planning documents, considering which varieties to try, which techniques to attempt, how to improve on last year's successes and learn from its failures. The work that occupies your winter days begins to include preparation for spring's demands. Tools that have rested through the cold months receive attention that will ready them for resumed service. Broken handles get replacements, dull blades receive sharpening, rust yields to oil and patience. Even these simple maintenance tasks carry anticipation, each tool prepared being another step toward the active season that will once again fill your days with outdoor work and visible progress. Your planning for next year's garden becomes more than abstract exercise as spring approaches. The sketches you draw of bed layouts, the lists you make of seeds to order, the calculations you perform of space and time and succession planting, all of these mental exercises begin to take on concrete reality as the season for implementation approaches. You can almost feel the soil in your hands, almost smell the earth warming under spring rain, almost see the first green shoots emerging from seeds planted in hope and tended with patience. The conversations you share with neighbors during winter's final months increasingly turn toward spring's possibilities. Plans for shared projects that winter's isolation prevented, discussions of improvements that will be possible when weather allows outdoor work, exchanges of ideas about new techniques to try and old methods to modify. These conversations serve multiple purposes. They maintain community connection in isolation's final weeks, while also preparing the groundwork for cooperation that will resume when conditions allow. Your body begins to anticipate spring's demands even while winter still requires its particular forms of endurance. The muscles that have adapted to winter work start to remember summer's requirements. The rhythm of your sleep begins to shift with lengthening days. Even your appetite changes as your metabolism prepares for the increased activity that spring will bring to your life. You find yourself drawn to foods that will provide energy for active work rather than just warmth for sedentary survival. The preserved food that has sustained you through winter's depth begins to show signs of approaching exhaustion that speak not of shortage, but of successful calculation. The jars that remain hold enough to carry you through winter's final weeks, while the timing of their depletion promises to coincide roughly with spring's first offerings. The potatoes in your root cellar grow eyes that speak of their eagerness to return to soil and growth. Even your meat supply approaches levels that will be replenished by spring's hunting and butchering opportunities. Your firewood consumption, though still substantial, begins to reflect the mathematical precision of your autumn calculation. The supply that seemed massive when first stacked now shows its careful proportioning, each stick burned bringing you closer to spring, while the remaining pile promises adequacy without waste. You find satisfaction in this precision, this evidence that experience and planning proved equal to winter's demands, without excess that would represent wasted effort. The books that filled your winter evenings with other worlds and other ideas begin to include practical texts that will guide spring work. Gardening manuals receive renewed attention as planting time approaches. Agricultural texts that seemed merely theoretical during winter's depth become practical guidance for decisions that will need to be made soon. Even fiction reading shifts toward stories that celebrate growth and renewal rather than survival and endurance. Your correspondence with distant friends and family begins to include references to spring plans, to work that will resume when weather permits, to visits that will be possible when travel becomes feasible again. These letters carry a different tone from winter's communications, less introspective, more outward-looking, filled with anticipation rather than mere endurance. You write not just of surviving winter, but of preparing for the abundance that will follow. The very quality of silence around your property begins to change as winter progresses toward spring. The deep quiet that characterized the coldest months gives way to subtly different sounds, wind that moves differently through bare branches, snow that falls with changed texture when temperatures rise even slightly, the occasional bird call that speaks of migration patterns beginning to shift. These changes accumulate into audible evidence that the season has turned its corner and begun its journey toward renewal. You know now, with the certainty that comes from successful completion of winter's test, that your preparation was adequate, your skills sufficient, your understanding accurate. The community that sustained you through isolation will emerge stronger from shared challenges. The land that appeared dead under snow's blanket retains all its productive capacity, waiting only for warmth to release it. The cycles that govern your world have once again proven their reliability, their tendency toward renewal rather than mere repetition. As you move through your daily routines during these final weeks of winter, each task carries within it the knowledge that soon these particular requirements will give way to spring's different demands. The fire you bank each evening will soon be needed only for cooking rather than survival. The water you carry will soon flow more freely as frozen systems thaw. The clothes that have protected you from bitter cold will soon be replaced by lighter garments suited to active outdoor work. This turning toward tomorrow does not diminish the significance of today's requirements. Winter has not yet released its grip completely, and vigilance remains necessary until spring establishes itself firmly. But the direction of change has become clear. The promise of renewal has revealed itself in countless small signs, and the faith that sustained you through the darkest months now finds confirmation in the reliable functioning of cycles larger than human concern, but utterly essential to human survival. You carry this knowledge as you move through winter's final days, the understanding that survival was never the ultimate goal, but only the foundation for continued participation in the endless cycle of death and renewal, scarcity and abundance, challenge and rest that characterizes not just the natural world, but human existence within it. Spring will return, as it always has, as it always will, carrying with it new opportunities for growth, production, community, and the accumulation of wisdom that will make next winter's challenges more manageable and next spring's abundance more easily achieved.